It took a long time. It gives me vindication for the upbringing of my parents, because whatever I've done, compassion and understanding and sympathy really emanates.
When FBI agents stepped into Judge Frank Caprio's luxurious mansion, they expected a routine investigation. What they uncovered instead shocked everyone, not just the agents, not just his fans, but the entire country. A discovery so terrifying, so unexpected, that it completely changed how the world sees one of America's most beloved public figures. Frank Caprio rose to fame as the warm-hearted, caught-in-Providence judge, beloved for his compassion, empathy, and sense of humor in the courtroom. Millions watched as he gave people second chances, balanced justice with kindness, and proved that humanity still had a place in the law. But behind the charisma and charm lay a story no one saw coming. When federal investigators made their way inside his home, they stumbled upon something chilling, a discovery that would leave fans questioning everything they thought they knew about him. Today, we unravel the mystery of the FBI's shocking find in Frank Caprio's mansion, the events leading up to it, the fallout that followed, and why it may forever alter the legacy of America's most compassionate judge. Before the shocking FBI discovery, Frank Caprio was celebrated as the very definition of fairness and compassion in the justice system. Born and raised in Providence, Rhode Island, Frank worked his way up from humble beginnings. His story was a classic tale of the American dream, the son of immigrants who became a respected lawyer, then a judge, admired not only for his rulings, but for his humanity. It wasn't long before his courtroom was transformed into something bigger. Through the television series Caught in Providence, millions around the world tuned in to watch Judge Caprio handle everyday cases with a mixture of wisdom and empathy. Whether it was a struggling single mother who couldn't pay a parking ticket, or a young person learning from their mistakes, Frank's ability to balance justice with mercy made him a household name. He wasn't just a judge anymore. He became a symbol of kindness, a reminder that even within the rigid walls of a courtroom, there was room for compassion. But as his fame grew, so did the scrutiny. And that's when the FBI's path eventually crossed his. With fame came wealth. Judge Caprio's success on television, combined with his career in law, allowed him to live comfortably. His mansion in Rhode Island was a far cry from the modest home where he grew up. Elegant, sprawling, and filled with reminders of his decades-long career, the house was a reflection of his journey from working-class roots to national prominence. But sometimes success attracts attention, not all of it good. As his reputation grew, whispers began circulating about Judge Caprio's finances, political ties, and the fortune he had quietly amassed. To most fans, it seemed unthinkable that their beloved judge could be hiding anything sinister. But to federal investigators, the mansion itself became a place of interest. When the FBI finally arrived, it wasn't just to admire the architecture. It was to uncover secrets no one believed existed within the home of America's kindest judge. It was an ordinary morning when neighbors noticed a sudden rush of black SUVs pulling into Judge Caprio's quiet street. At first, they thought it was just another day of filming, or perhaps important visitors. But within moments, FBI agents in dark jackets were walking briskly toward the front door of his mansion. The news spread quickly. By the time word reached the local press, people were already speculating wildly. Why would the FBI be interested in Judge Caprio, the man who had become a national icon of fairness and decency, the man who brought hope to so many? Inside, the atmosphere was tense. Agents executed a search warrant, meticulously combing through the mansion room by room. Every drawer, every hidden compartment, every space that could conceal something was open. At first, it seemed like nothing was out of place. The mansion looked like what you'd expect from a successful, respected judge. But the FBI doesn't act on rumors alone. They had been following leads, piecing together information, And now, standing inside his home, they were determined to find the truth. Long before the FBI raid, quiet whispers had begun circulating about Judge Caprio's life outside the courtroom. Some pointed to his rapid rise in wealth, others to connections with influential figures in politics and business. Still, for years, these whispers had been dismissed as nothing more than jealous rumors. After all, Frank Caprio seemed untouchable, a man whose reputation was built on compassion, integrity, and honesty. But investigators had noticed inconsistencies, financial records that didn't quite add up, unexplained transfers, and documents suggesting that someone close to him might have been hiding information that could tarnish his flawless public image. The FBI believed the answers were hidden in his mansion, tucked away in a place no one thought to look. When agents finally stumbled upon the first clue, buried deep within the home study, the story of Frank Caprio was about to take a terrifying turn. In the quiet stillness of Frank Caprio's study, agents began carefully pulling files from an ornate wooden cabinet. At first, it seemed ordinary: legal papers, family photographs, and letters spanning decades. But tucked behind a false back panel, investigators uncovered something startling: a locked metal box, deliberately hidden away. The box was old and heavy, secured with a simple but sturdy lock. It looked out of place in the polished home of a man who had nothing to hide. When the FBI finally pried it open, the contents left even seasoned agents silent. Inside were stacks of documents, handwritten notes, and sealed envelopes, evidence of dealings and connections that seemed far removed from the warm, compassionate image Caprio had built for himself on national television. Among the papers were financial ledgers, listing transactions in large amounts that didn't match his reported income. Some bore cryptic notes, initials, and references to offshore accounts. Others hinted at property holdings and investments under names unfamiliar to the investigators. The most chilling find, however, wasn't the money trails. It was the letters. Handwritten, some decades old, they suggested ties to individuals who had long been under federal investigation. Whether these were friendships, legal connections, or something more sinister wasn't immediately clear. But one thing was certain: the life Judge Caprio presented in the public eye didn't fully align with what was being uncovered inside his mansion. The discovery wasn't proof of guilt, not yet, but it was enough to rattle the team and confirm that this wasn't just a fishing expedition. Something darker was buried here, and the FBI had only scratched the surface. While one team pored over the documents in the study, another began inspecting the mansion more thoroughly. At first glance, the home was pristine, decorated with memorabilia, awards, and family heirlooms. But FBI agents are trained to look beyond appearances. In the basement, beneath shelves stacked with boxes of holiday decorations, an agent noticed something peculiar: a section of wall that sounded hollow when tapped. After closer inspection, they found the faint outline of a hidden door. Behind it was a narrow stairway leading to a small, windowless room. Inside, the room was sparse but unsettling. There was an old desk, a safe, and shelves lined with more boxes. Dust suggested the space hadn't been visited frequently, but the contents were carefully preserved. Inside the boxes, agents found reels of old recordings, VHS tapes, and journals, some dating back decades. What made the room truly chilling wasn't just what was inside, but the secrecy of it. Why would a respected judge, a man praised for his transparency and honesty, have a concealed space built into his home? When agents began reviewing the tapes and reading through the journals, they realized they weren't just uncovering financial secrets. They were opening a door into a private world Judge Caprio had kept hidden, a world that could completely rewrite his legacy. The reels and VHS tapes discovered in the hidden basement room were immediately sent for analysis. Some were old courtroom footage, while others contained home recordings, but among them were tapes unlike anything the FBI expected. The first shocking detail was the labeling. Some tapes bore cryptic titles such as Providence, 1979, Meeting, Confidential, and Private Session, Do Not Destroy. Each carried dates spanning several decades. The labels alone suggested these recordings weren't meant for the public eye. When agents played the first reel, the crackling audio revealed conversations in hushed tones, voices of individuals discussing financial arrangements, favors, and what sounded like political negotiations. Though the identities of those speaking weren't always clear, the implication was undeniable. These tapes contained material that could tie Judge Caprio to powerful figures and secretive dealings. Even more disturbing were tapes of closed-door conversations from within judicial chambers. Some appeared to capture discussions about sentencing, fines, and outcomes that raised questions about whether everything had been as impartial as it appeared on television. The very judge who had become a symbol of fairness and compassion might have been entangled in a web of backroom dealings no one ever suspected. The FBI realized immediately that these tapes were dynamite, not only for Caprio, but for the individuals caught on tape with him. This wasn't just about one man anymore. It was about a network, possibly spanning decades, hidden in plain sight behind the warm smile of America's kindest judge. Alongside the tapes, agents began pouring through the handwritten journals found on the shelves of the hidden room. Unlike the official records in his study, these notebooks were personal, raw, and unsettlingly honest. Page after page, Judge Caprio documented his frustrations, fears, and ambitions. Some entries reflected the man fans thought they knew, a compassionate judge wrestling with the challenges of balancing law and mercy. But sprinkled throughout were passages that hinted at a more complex, darker figure. There were references to pressure from above, deals that must remain buried, and cryptic mentions of payments made in exchange for favorable outcomes. Some notes suggested he had been protecting more than just his reputation. He might have been protecting powerful people whose secrets were far more dangerous than his own. The journals painted a portrait of a man torn between two worlds, the public hero adored for his kindness, and the private operator walking a fine line between justice and compromise. Whether he was a willing participant or a man cornered by powerful influences remained unclear. For the FBI, however, one fact was certain. These journals were damning. They weren't just reflections of a man's inner conflict. They were records, detailed enough to suggest a double life, one that could unravel everything people thought they knew about Frank Caprio. When whispers of the FBI's discovery inside Frank Caprio's mansion finally leaked to the press, the reaction was immediate and explosive. Headlines screamed across national outlets. Talk shows debated the implications, and fans flooded social media in disbelief. How could the man who became a household name for mercy and compassion now be connected to hidden tapes, secret rooms, and journals that painted a very different picture? For many, it felt like a betrayal. Judge Caprio had symbolized hope in a world where the justice system often seemed cold and unfeeling. Now, that symbol was tarnished. Outside his Rhode Island home, crowds gathered, some in support, others demanding answers. Longtime fans clung to the belief that there had to be an explanation, that perhaps the tapes and journals were being misinterpreted. Others, however, saw the discoveries as confirmation that no public figure, no matter how beloved, could escape scrutiny. The shockwave rippled beyond fans. Legal analysts began to question whether past rulings could be reopened. Politicians distanced themselves from him. And within the auction of public opinion, Judge Caprio's once flawless reputation was on the line. As investigators continued their work, one question loomed large. What would be Frank Caprio's legacy? Would he be remembered as the compassionate judge who gave people second chances, or as a man whose hidden life undermined the very principles he championed? Some argued that the discoveries didn't erase the good he had done. Countless people had walked out of his courtroom with hope, dignity, and a belief that justice could be humane, that couldn't be undone by hidden documents or cryptic journals. Others, however, insisted that the revelations changed everything. If even a fraction of what was uncovered proved true, then the image of Judge Caprio was nothing more than a carefully constructed facade. The duality of his life, the warmth in public, the shadows in private, would forever haunt his legacy. What made the tragedy so compelling was the contrast. Few public figures had risen so high on the strength of compassion alone. Few had inspired such universal admiration, and few falls from grace, if confirmed, would sting quite as much as his. The mansion, once a symbol of success, now stood as a metaphor. Elegant on the outside, but hiding secrets within its walls, just like the man himself. The FBI's terrifying discovery inside Frank Caprio's mansion didn't just shake the foundations of one man's life, it forced the world to reconsider how much we truly know about the figures we idolize. Behind every polished smile, every television moment, and every story of compassion, there may be hidden truths waiting to surface. For Frank Caprio, the revelations left his legacy suspended between two narratives: the beloved judge who embodied kindness, and the complicated man whose secrets cast long shadows over his public image. Which version history will remember depends not only on the evidence, but on how willing people are to separate the man from the myth. And for us, the viewers, perhaps the lesson is this: no matter how pure someone may seem in the public eye, every life has its hidden rooms, every mansion its locked doors, and every smile its secrets. So, what do you think? Does the FBI's discovery change how you see Judge Caprio? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more untold stories and hidden truths about the people we thought we knew best. Because sometimes, the most terrifying discoveries aren't made in courtrooms, but in the homes of those we trusted the most.